Hello and welcome, English learners, to another episode of Best English Podcast. I'm your host, Sophia, and I'm thrilled to have you join me today. If you're an intermediate English learner looking to truly unlock your potential, then you are in the perfect place. Today, we're diving deep into two very important parts of learning a language: English listening and speaking practice. You see, for many of us, learning English often starts with grammar rules, long lists of words, and maybe reading exercises. And while those things are definitely important, they're just pieces of a bigger puzzle. The real magic, the true ability to speak easily, happens when you can understand what you hear without effort and confidently say what you want to say. This isn't just about passing a test. It's about connecting with people, understanding different cultures, and opening up a world of new chances. In this long episode, which we've made to be a full guide, we're going to explore why listening and speaking are so connected. We'll talk about common problems you might face, and most importantly, we'll give you useful tips, real-life examples, and even some special practice exercises to help you on your journey. We'll share real stories of struggle, hard work, and finally, success, to show you these points and make learning feel more human and easy to relate to. So, grab a pen and paper, or just relax and listen, because by the end of this session, I hope you'll feel stronger, more sure of yourself, and more excited than ever about mastering English. Think about how you learned your first language, your native tongue. You didn't start by memorizing grammar tables, did you? You listened. You listened closely to your parents, your family, the sounds around you. You picked up the rhythm, the way voices go up and down, the words and the structure of the language just by being around it. And then, slowly, you started to copy those sounds, to say your first words, and finally, to make sentences. This natural way of learning shows a very important truth. Listening is the information that helps you speak. The more good English you listen to, the richer your mind becomes with sounds, words, phrases, and sentence patterns. It's like filling up a well. The more water you put in, that's your listening. The more water you can take out, that's your speaking. When you listen actively, you're not just hearing words, you're learning natural pronunciation, which words are stressed, the ups and downs of voices, and common sayings. You learn how native speakers link words together, how they shorten sounds, and how they show feelings and meaning beyond just what single words mean in a dictionary. This learning without even trying then naturally helps your speaking. You start to sound more natural, your rhythm gets better, and you find the right words in the right situations more easily. On the other hand, speaking also helps your listening. When you try to say your thoughts, you become more aware of the words or grammar you might be missing. You might notice that you find it hard to say certain words, or that your sentences don't flow as smoothly as you'd like. This awareness then makes you listen more carefully. You'll start to pay closer attention to how native speakers use those challenging words or build those complex sentences, turning your speaking struggles into chances to listen and learn. It's a beautiful, connected relationship, a continuous circle of getting better. As an intermediate learner, you've already reached a big step. You can have basic talks, understand simple instructions, and probably read a good amount of English. But you've likely reached a point where progress feels slower and new problems appear. It's a very common feeling, so please know you're not alone. Let's talk about some of the most common difficulties when it comes to listening and speaking. First, there's how fast native speakers talk. It often feels like they're talking incredibly quickly, doesn't it? They don't slow down for you, and sometimes it can be very frustrating to keep up. This isn't just about knowing single words. It's about understanding whole phrases and sentences quickly, getting the main ideas and grasping the overall meaning before the talk moves on. It's like trying to catch raindrops in a storm. You know they're there, but catching them one by one is a different story. Then, we have different accents and ways of speaking. English is spoken all over the world, and every area, sometimes even every city, has its own special accent, its own rhythm, its own small changes in how words are said. Moving from a clear, textbook American accent, which you might know best from learning books, to a strong Scottish accent, a fast Australian accent, or a soft Indian English accent, can feel like learning a whole new language. It's a wonderful variety, but it can certainly be a challenge for your ears. Next, there are those tricky missing words and common phrases. You might understand 80% of what's said, which is great, but that important 20%, often a common saying like kick the bucket, meaning to die, a verb phrase like put up with, meaning to tolerate, or a slang word like chill out, meaning to relax, can completely change the meaning of a sentence, leaving you confused and lost. These phrases are everywhere in natural talks, and they don't follow simple rules. Perhaps the biggest hurdle for many is feeling unsure and self-conscious. This is a huge one. You understand the grammar, you know the words. You can even write beautiful sentences, but when it's time to speak, fear takes over. Fear of making mistakes, fear of being judged, fear of not being understood, or just the fear of sounding silly. This can make you stop, stay quiet, or stick to very simple, safe sentences, even when you know you could say more. It's a mental block, and it's very common. And finally, for many, there's not enough chance to practice. Especially if you don't live in a country where English is spoken, finding regular, real chances to practice listening and speaking can be a real challenge. Books and apps are good, but they can't fully copy the natural and unexpected way real talks happen. This can lead to what I call stuck-in-your-head syndrome, where you can form perfect sentences in your mind. But when you open your mouth, it all falls apart because you haven't practiced the actual act of making those sounds and connecting those thoughts right away. It's easy to feel overwhelmed when you think about becoming fluent. It can feel like a huge mountain that's impossible to climb, especially when you're facing those problems we just talked about. But real progress isn't about big jumps. It's about steady, small steps. Think of it like building a house brick by brick. Each brick might seem tiny, but together they make something strong and impressive. Instead of trying for perfect English in a month, which is not realistic and often makes you feel bad, aim for something smaller, something you can achieve this week or this month. For example, you could try to understand 5% more of that English podcast you listen to next week. Or maybe by the end of the month, you want to be able to confidently order coffee in an English-speaking cafe without stopping. Maybe your goal for your next online English class is to ask 2 questions to make things clearer, even if they feel a little strange at first. Or promise to practice shadowing, that's repeating after native speakers, for just 10 minutes every day. These small, reachable goals build momentum and, very importantly, stop you from getting tired. Each small win, each little step forward, strengthens your effort and makes you want to keep going. You start to see clear proof that your hard work is paying off. Remember, learning a language is a long race, not a quick dash. There will be days when you feel great, and days when you feel like you're not moving forward at all. Enjoy the journey, celebrate every little step forward, and be kind to yourself. I remember a time early in my own language learning journey, not English, but another language I was trying to master, when I thought I was doing quite well. I could read books, I understood grammar rules, and I felt sure I could put sentences together in my head. I thought, yes, I'm getting there. Then came a trip, and a rather humbling experience at a hotel front desk. I needed to ask about laundry service, a simple, everyday task. I had practiced the sentence in my mind perfectly. Do you have laundry service, and how much does it cost? Simple, right? I walked up to the desk, feeling quite happy with myself. But when I got there, the person at the desk, a lovely person, spoke with a very strong local accent, and she spoke incredibly fast. I managed to catch laundry service, thankfully, but then she quickly said a lot of words about times, where to drop off clothes, and how to pay. My brain just stopped. It was like a sudden, solid wall of sound. All the words I knew, all the grammar rules, just disappeared. I smiled weakly, said, thank you, and walked away, completely lost. I had to go back to my room, look up the words I thought I heard, and then shyly go back to ask again, much slower this time, pointing and using hand signs. That experience was a big wake-up call. It made me realize that just knowing words and grammar isn't enough. You need to train your ears to the real speed and sounds of the language. You need to learn ways to deal with not understanding everything. And most importantly, you need to build the confidence to ask for clarification, to say, could you please repeat that? Or could you speak a little slower? From that day on, I made active listening a top priority. I started listening to podcasts, real talks with native speakers, and movies, focusing especially on understanding the flow and small details of natural speech, not just trying to catch every single word. And you know what? That focus on active listening made a huge difference in my ability to speak because my mind finally had enough real information to use. It was like finally having enough ingredients to bake a cake rather than just knowing the recipe. This brings us perfectly to our next part, where we'll look at specific ways to listen actively that will greatly improve your understanding. So, what exactly is active listening? It's more than just letting sounds enter your ears. It's a conscious, careful way of understanding and making sense of what you hear. Think of it this way: hearing is passive, like background noise. Active listening is involved, like solving a puzzle. It means focusing on the meaning, not just single words. It means finding the main ideas and the small details that support them, and understanding the situation and the small differences in meaning. It's about getting the speaker's purpose, their feelings, and the subtle hints they give. For intermediate learners, this is very important. You might be able to pick out words you know, but if you're not listening actively, you'll miss how those words connect, the overall message, and the speaker's tone. It's like reading a book and only understanding every fifth word. You'll get bits and pieces, but not the full story. Let's break down active listening into useful steps you can take before, during, and after you listen. Before you listen, this is about getting your mind ready for what's coming. Before you press play on that podcast, video, or even before a conversation, take a moment to guess what the content will be about. If it's a podcast episode, look at the title. If it's a news report, read the headline. What do you expect to hear? What words might come up? For example, if the title of an episode is The Future of Artificial Intelligence, you can expect words like technology, new ideas, robots, right and wrong, and so on. This simple act of guessing helps your mind use what it already knows and get ready for the incoming information, making it easier to understand. You can also quickly review any new words you might have seen that are related to the topic. Don't try to understand every single word before you listen, but give your mind a head start. While you are listening, this is where the real work happens. Instead of getting worried when you don't understand a word, try to focus on the main message. What's the main idea? What are the key points being made? Try to find important words, the nouns and verbs that carry the most meaning. For instance, in a sentence like, "The government announced a new policy to reduce carbon emissions by 20% over the next decade," the important words are government, announced, policy, reduce, carbon emissions, 20%, decade. Even if you miss some of the smaller words, understanding these important words will give you the main message. Another strong tip is to take notes, even if it's just writing down a few words or symbols. You don't need to write full sentences. Just capture the main ideas, names, dates, or any new words you want to look up later. This keeps your mind busy and helps you remember information. Also, pay attention to words and phrases that connect ideas. These are like road signs that show you how the speaker's thoughts are linked. Words like however, therefore, in addition, for example, firstly, finally, are like guides that help you follow the speaker's ideas. Knowing these can greatly improve your understanding of the overall structure of what's being said. After you listen, the learning doesn't stop when the sound ends. This part is very important for making your understanding solid. Try to summarize what you heard, either in your head, by speaking aloud, or by writing it down. Can you explain the main points to yourself or to a friend? This makes your mind process and organize the information. If you're listening to a podcast or a news report, try to talk about it with someone else. What did you think? Did you agree or disagree with anything? Finally, don't be afraid to listen again. The first time, you might focus on the main ideas. The second time, you can focus on specific words or tricky pronunciations. The third time, you might focus on the speaker's tone or how they connect their ideas. Each time you listen again, you'll find new layers of understanding. Let me tell you about a brilliant young architect named Kenji, who had recently moved to London from Japan to work for a famous company. Kenji was incredibly talented, his designs were new and fresh, and his written English was perfect. He felt confident in his skills, especially after doing very well in his job interview. However, a few weeks into his new job, he found himself in a rather difficult situation, all because of a big misunderstanding during a team meeting. The project was a very important skyscraper, and the team was talking about a critical deadline for turning in the first drawings of the building. Kenji's manager, a very fast-talking woman named Sarah, was explaining the schedule. Kenji was listening closely, or so he thought. He heard words like drawings, submission, Friday, and review. He nodded, making notes in his mind. He was sure he understood that the drawings were due by Friday for a review on Monday. However, when Monday came and Sarah asked for his finished drawings, Kenji looked confused. "But I thought they were for review on Monday, meaning I had until Monday morning to finish them?" he said slowly. Sarah sighed, a little frustrated. "No, Kenji. I said they needed to be submitted for review on Friday, so we could start the review process over the weekend and talk about them first thing Monday morning." The misunderstanding came from a small difference in how Sarah said things and Kenji's passive listening. He had focused on the single words Friday and Monday, but missed the important small words and the implied timeline. He hadn't actively understood the phrase for review on Friday as a deadline for turning in work, but instead as the start of the review time. Kenji was very embarrassed. He said sorry many times and worked all night to catch up. But more importantly, this event changed things for him. He realized that just hearing words wasn't enough. He needed to understand the true meaning behind them, the exact timing, and the small hints in the conversation. From that day forward, Kenji tried a new way. Before every meeting, he would quickly read the meeting plan and think of possible words that might come up. During the meeting, he started taking quick, short notes, focusing on key actions and deadlines. If he heard a phrase that wasn't clear, he wouldn't just let it pass. He started practicing phrases like, "Just to make sure, Sarah, did you mean the drawings are due on Friday, or that we talk about them from Friday?" Or, "Could you say that last point about turning in the work in a different way?" This simple act of asking for clarity, which came from active listening, stopped many future misunderstandings and greatly improved his confidence in meetings. Kenji's story teaches us that sometimes a small misunderstanding can lead to a huge improvement in how we listen. Now, let's try a little active listening exercise together. I'm going to describe a short news piece, and I want you to imagine hearing it. Your job is to listen not just for single words, but for the main idea, the important people, and one key detail. Imagine you're listening to a local news report. The reporter says, "Good evening. Local leaders have today announced a new plan to make the city's downtown area lively again. Mayor Thompson said that the Green Spaces project will turn 3 unused car parks into public parks with walking paths and community gardens. Money for the project, expected to be $5 million, will come from state money and private donations. Building is expected to start in early spring next year and finish within 18 months." Now, pause for a moment. What was the main topic of that news report? Who was the key person mentioned? And what was one important detail about where the money for the project would come from? Take a moment to think of your answers. The main topic was making the city's downtown area lively again with a new plan. The key person mentioned was Mayor Thompson. One important detail about the money was that it's expected to be $5 million and will come from state money and private donations. Did you get them? If not, don't worry. This is exactly what practice is for. The goal isn't to be perfect, but to be involved. Listen to that imagined piece again in your mind, focusing on those key parts. Beyond just understanding the words, intermediate learners often find it hard to understand the way words are spoken. This brings us to 2 big areas: accents and connected speech. When it comes to accents, the best way to learn is by listening a lot. The more you listen to different accents, British, American, Australian, Irish, Canadian, South African, and so on, the more your ear will get used to them. Don't just listen to one type of English. Look for podcasts, YouTube channels, movies, and TV shows from different English-speaking places. Websites like YouTube let you find content from all over the world. Start with accents that are a little different from what you're used to, and then slowly challenge yourself with more unfamiliar ones. It's like training a muscle. The more you use it in different ways, the stronger and more flexible it becomes. Pay attention to how different sounds are made in different accents. For instance, the T sound in water might sound like a soft D in American English, but a harder T in British English. Noticing these small differences will greatly improve your understanding. Then there's connected speech and shortened words. Native speakers don't say every word clearly, especially in casual talks. Words blend together, sounds are dropped, and some words are made shorter. For example, going to often becomes gonna, want to becomes wanna, and kind of becomes kinda. This is completely normal. but it can be very confusing if you're expecting to hear every single sound. The phrase, "Did you eat yet?" often sounds like, "Did you eat yet?" The main idea here is to listen for the flow of the sentence rather than trying to hear each word separately. When you hear gonna, understand that it means going to. When you hear wanna, understand want to. You can also practice copying these shortened forms. Listen to a native speaker say, "I'm gonna go to the store," and then try to copy their exact pronunciation, including the shortened part. This active copying helps your mind recognize these patterns more easily when you hear them. It's about training your ear to recognize the sound of the whole phrase as one unit, not just a bunch of separate words. Now that we've talked about training your ears, let's focus on training your voice, and perhaps even more importantly, your mind. Building confidence and speaking easily is a journey that needs courage, practice, and a willingness to accept that you won't be perfect. Let's be honest, speaking a new language can be scary. That tight feeling in your stomach, your mind suddenly going blank, the fear of making a mistake, of sounding silly, or of not being understood. It's a completely normal feeling, and almost everyone learning a language feels it. But here's the secret. Everyone makes mistakes. Native speakers make mistakes. The goal is not to be perfect. The goal is to communicate. Think of it like learning to ride a bicycle. You fell, didn't you? Probably many times. But you didn't stop riding because you fell. You got back on. The same is true for speaking English. Every mistake is a chance to learn. It's a sign that you're trying, that you're pushing yourself, and that's exactly what you need to do to get better. Focus on getting your message across, even if it's not perfectly correct in grammar. Being clear is more important than being perfect, always. Be kind to yourself, know that you feel scared, and then gently push past it. Remember, you get better when you step outside your comfort zone. When we talk about how words are said, it's not just about saying single sounds correctly, like the th in think or the r in red. While those are important, truly natural-sounding English involves how your voice goes up and down, which words you stress, and the rhythm of your speech. These parts are like the music of the language, and they show meaning just as much as the words themselves. How your voice goes up and down is the rise and fall of your voice. Think about how your voice goes up at the end of a question, like, "Are you coming?" Or how it falls at the end of a statement, like, "I am coming." The way your voice moves can completely change the meaning of a sentence. For example, if you say, "He's here," with your voice going up, it sounds like a question, even without a question mark. If you say it with a voice going down, it's a statement. Stress means which words or parts of words you say more strongly. In English, we stress important words in a sentence to highlight new information or to show feelings. For example, in the sentence, "I love this podcast," saying "love" more strongly shows your strong feeling. If you say, "I love this podcast," saying this more strongly means you might not love other podcasts. Inside words, parts of words also have stress. Think of present as a gift, where the first part is stressed, versus present as an action, where the second part is stressed. The stress changes the meaning. The rhythm of English is also very important. English is a language where stressed parts of words happen at about the same time, and unstressed parts are squeezed together. This is different from languages where every part of a word takes about the same amount of time. Listening to and copying this rhythm will make your speech sound much more natural. For practice, try this. Find a short audio clip, maybe a sentence or two from this podcast, or a line from a movie. Listen closely to how the voice goes up and down and which words are stressed. Then try to copy it exactly. Record yourself and compare. Does your voice rise and fall in the same way? Are you stressing the same words? This isn't about copying an accent perfectly, but about catching the musicality of English. And yes, those common tricky sounds are still important. The th sound, both with voice like in this and without voice like in think. The R and L sounds, which can be very similar for some learners, and various vowel sounds like the difference between ship and sheep often cause trouble. There are many online resources with specific exercises for these sounds. My advice is to pick one or two sounds that you find especially hard and spend a few minutes each day practicing them. Use a mirror to watch your mouth and record yourself to hear the difference. Let me introduce you to Maria, a talented graphic designer from Brazil. Maria had been studying English for years. She knew her grammar very well, and she could read difficult articles. But when it came to speaking, she froze. She felt very shy, afraid that her accent was too strong, or that she would make too many mistakes. She would often nod and smile in talks, hoping no one would ask her a direct question. Her big step forward came not in a classroom, but in a rather unexpected place, a local community art class she joined in her city. The class was taught by an excited American artist, and the other students were a mix of local people and people from other countries, all speaking English. Maria at first kept to herself, drawing quietly. But one day the teacher, seeing her beautiful work, asked her a question about how she designed things. Maria mumbled a few words, feeling her face turn red. Later that week, another student, a friendly woman named Chloe, came up to her. "Your designs are amazing, Maria. I saw you talking to the teacher. Don't be shy. Your English is great." Chloe, sensing Maria's hesitation, suggested they meet for coffee to talk about art. Maria, though nervous, agreed. During their first coffee meeting, Maria still struggled. She'd pause, search for words, and say sorry for her mistakes. But Chloe was patient and encouraging. She didn't correct every mistake. Instead, she focused on understanding Maria's message. Chloe also shared a trick she used when learning Spanish: sentence starters. She suggested Maria prepare a few phrases for common situations. For example, instead of just saying, "I agree," Maria could try, "I completely agree with that point, because," or, "That's an interesting idea, however, I think." Maria started using this. Before the next art class, she thought about what she might want to say. She prepared phrases like, "I really like the way you used color here," or, "Could you explain the technique for this part?" She also started copying Chloe's way of speaking, repeating phrases she heard Chloe use. Slowly, almost without being noticed at first, something changed. Maria began to take part more. She started talks by using her prepared sentence starters. She learned to pause, take a breath, and think of her ideas without panicking. When she made a mistake, she'd either fix it herself or just move on, realizing that Chloe still understood her. The art class became her safe place, a low-pressure place where she could try out her English. One evening, after a very lively talk in class, Maria realized she had spoken for almost 5 minutes straight, explaining her latest piece, without stopping, without saying sorry, and without freezing. It wasn't perfect, but she spoke easily. She felt an incredible sense of freedom. Chloe came up to her, smiling brightly. "Maria, you were amazing tonight. Your English has really improved." Maria smiled, a real confident smile. Her big step forward wasn't about suddenly having perfect grammar. It was about finding her voice, building confidence in a supportive place, and realizing that communicating was more important than being perfect. Inspired by Maria's journey, let's look at some useful speaking tips you can use right away. First, there's shadowing, which Maria found so helpful. This is a powerful way to improve how you say words, how your voice goes up and down, and the rhythm of your speech. Find a short audio clip of a native speaker. Apart from this podcast, a line from a movie, a news report. Listen to it once or twice. Then play it again and try to speak at the same time as the speaker, copying their exact pronunciation, speed, and voice changes. Don't worry about understanding every word at first. Focus on copying the sounds. It feels a bit silly at first, but it trains your mouth and mind to make English sounds more naturally. Start with short phrases, then move to sentences, and finally, whole paragraphs. Next, try talking to yourself. Yes, talk to yourself. This might sound strange, but it's very effective, especially if you don't have someone to talk with. Tell yourself about your day. I'm going to make coffee now. First, I'll boil the water. Then I'll pour it into the cup. Describe things around you. This is a blue mug. It has a handle. It's made of ceramic. Practice talks in your head, or even out loud. Imagine you're at a restaurant ordering food, or at a store asking for directions. This lets you practice making sentences on the spot without the pressure of a real audience. It builds muscle memory for your mouth and mind. Of course, the best situation is finding people to speak with. This is where you use what you've learned in the real world. Look for language exchange apps like Tandem or HelloTalk, where you can connect with native English speakers who want to learn your language. You can also search for local English conversation groups in your city or even online communities. The main thing is to find someone patient and encouraging who is willing to let you practice and make mistakes. Don't be afraid to start talks. Remember Maria's experience. A supportive environment can make all the difference. As Chloe suggested to Maria, using sentence starters and connecting words can really help, especially for intermediate learners. These are phrases that help you organize your thoughts, share your ideas, and move smoothly from one idea to the next. Instead of just saying yes or no, try. In my opinion, I think. I completely agree with that point. That's an interesting idea, however, I tend to think, first of all, I'd like to say, to sum up, on the one hand, on the other hand. These phrases give you a little time to think, make your speech sound more organized, and give you a way to express more complex ideas. Keep a list of these phrases handy and try to use one or two in every talk you have. Finally, work on building a comfort zone of words. These are topics you can talk about easily and confidently. Think about your hobbies, your job, your family, your favorite foods, your travel experiences. These are subjects where you already have many ideas and probably a good number of words in your native language. Practice talking about these topics in English. The more you speak about things you care about, the more natural and easy your speech will become. Once you're comfortable with these topics, you can slowly make your comfort zone bigger to include new subjects. Let's try a small role play. Imagine you're at a coffee shop. You walk up to the counter, and the person serving says, "Hi there. What can I get for you today?" Pause the podcast right now. How would you order a medium latte with oat milk and a chocolate chip cookie? What would you say? Try to use a phrase to start your order if you can, like, "I'd like to order," or, "Could I please have?" Take your time. Practice it out loud. Don't worry if it's not perfect. The act of forming the words and saying them is what matters. Great. Did you say something like, "Hi"? Could I please have a medium latte with oat milk and a chocolate chip cookie, please? Or maybe, I'd like to order a medium oat milk latte and one chocolate chip cookie. Fantastic! The more you practice these everyday situations, the more natural they'll become. So far, we've looked at listening and speaking as separate skills, but in the real world, they are always connected. Every conversation is like a dance between listening and replying, understanding and expressing. Let's see how to put these skills together for truly good communication. Conversations are more than just sharing information. They're about connecting. And there's an art to them. First, think about starting and ending conversations. How do you politely begin a chat? Phrases like, "Excuse me, do you have a moment?" Or, "Hi, how's your day going?" are great ways to start. To end a conversation nicely, you can say, "Well, it was great talking to you," or, "I should probably get going now, but it was lovely to chat." These small phrases make a big difference in how people see you. Next, asking questions to make things clear is a superpower for intermediate learners. Don't be afraid to say you didn't understand something. It shows you are paying attention and eager to learn. Instead of just nodding without understanding, try. "Could you say that in a different way, please?" "I'm sorry. Could you explain what you mean by that word or phrase?" So, if I understand correctly, you're saying, "Then repeat what you think you heard." "Could you speak a little slower, please?" These phrases are very valuable for making sure you have truly understood the message. Then there's sharing your ideas, agreeing, and disagreeing politely. English speakers value politeness, especially when you don't agree. To share an idea, I think that зрение, с моей стороны. To agree, I completely agree. That's exactly what I was thinking. You're absolutely right. To disagree politely, I see your point, but I'm not sure I completely agree. That's an interesting idea. However, I tend to think. Зрение. Я понял, о чем вы говорите, но у меня есть слегка другой взгляд. Notice how these phrases make the disagreement softer, helping the conversation flow more smoothly. And finally, remember to listen actively in conversations. This means not just waiting for your turn to speak, but truly understanding what the other person is saying. Show you're listening by nodding, looking them in the eye, and using small sounds like, uh-huh, right, I see, or that's interesting. These are called back-channeling cues, and they tell the speaker that you are involved and following along. When you reply, try to build on what the other person said rather than just jumping to a new topic. This shows real interest and makes the conversation feel natural. Let's hear about Amir, a software engineer from Egypt, who had recently moved to Canada with his young family. Amir's English was good for technical talks at work, but he often felt overwhelmed in social situations, especially when difficult topics came up. One day, his daughter's school called to set up a meeting with her teacher. Amir felt a wave of worry. He knew he had to understand the teacher completely and clearly say his worries about his daughter's progress. He got ready by looking over common phrases used in schools and looking up words related to education. He even practiced explaining his daughter's way of learning to himself in English. When the day came, he walked into the classroom, his heart beating fast. The teacher, Ms. Jenkins, was kind but spoke quite quickly and used some school words Amir didn't know. Instead of nodding along, Amir remembered his goal, to truly understand. He listened actively, focusing on Ms. Jenkins' main points about his daughter's reading development. When she used a word like phonemic awareness, Amir immediately spoke up. "Excuse me, Ms. Jenkins, Could you please explain what phonemic awareness means? Ms. Jenkins paused, smiled, and explained it in simpler words. Amir made a note in his mind. Later, when Ms. Jenkins talked about a new reading program, Amir listened closely for the details. He heard her mention daily reading logs and parents helping. He then asked a question to make things clear. So, if I understand correctly, we need to sign a reading log every day, and our job is to listen to her read for at least 15 minutes. Ms. Jenkins confirmed, "Exactly, Mr. Hassan." When it was Amir's turn to speak, he felt more confident because he knew he had understood everything. He started by thanking Ms. Jenkins for her points. "Thank you for explaining all of that, Ms. Jenkins. I appreciate your thoughts." Then, he used a phrase to start his worry. "From my side, I've noticed that my daughter sometimes gets frustrated with longer books. Do you have any ideas for helping her read more difficult texts?" He said his worry clearly, and because he had listened actively, his question was directly related to their talk. The meeting, which Amir had been afraid of, turned out to be a success. He left feeling strong, not just because he had understood the teacher, but because he had actively taken part, asked smart questions, and clearly said his thoughts. He realized that putting his listening skills together with his speaking tips allowed him to handle a difficult social situation well and speak up for his daughter. It was a clear example of how powerful combined practice can be. The world is open to you when it comes to English learning resources. Here are just a few ideas to keep your journey going. Language learning apps. Beyond the basics, many apps offer speaking practice, help with pronunciation, and listening exercises. Look for ones that focus on everyday talks. Online groups. Join forums or social media groups for English learners. You can ask questions, share your experiences, and even find people to practice speaking with. YouTube channels. There are countless channels made for learning English, covering everything from grammar to how to say words to tips for talking. Find hosts whose teaching style you enjoy. Online teachers. If you can, an online teacher can give you special feedback and planned practice made just for your needs. Local meetups. Search for English conversation clubs or international gatherings in your city. These are great chances to practice in a relaxed, friendly setting. Reading aloud. Read English books, articles, or even this podcast script out loud. This helps connect written words with spoken sounds and improves how easily you speak. My dear English learners, as we finish this full guide, I want to leave you with this thought. Your journey to mastering English is special, and it's incredibly valuable. Every word you learn, every sentence you speak, every talk you understand is a step forward. There will be challenges, there will be times of worry, but there will also be amazing moments of success and connection. Remember that listening and speaking are two sides of the same coin, always helping each other. Embrace active listening, push past your speaking fears, and use these skills in your daily life. Be steady, be patient with yourself, and celebrate every single win, no matter how small. You have the dedication, you have the desire, and with the tips we've talked about today, you have the tools. Keep practicing, keep exploring, and keep believing in your ability to communicate confidently and easily in English. The world is waiting to hear your voice. Thank you for joining me on Best English Podcast. I'm Sophia, and I look forward to our next talk. Keep listening, keep speaking, and keep growing.